They thought it was funny, leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere. "Let's see if he can make it back," my brother laughed as the Suburban pulled away, dust swirling in the air behind them. I never saw them again. 15 years later, they found me. That summer, I turned 22. It was supposed to be uneventful. Another summer of minimum wage hours at Dad's hardware store, crashing in my childhood bedroom because college was a waste of money, according to Dad, and not realistic, according to Mom. Mostly it was just another season of surviving as the family punching bag while my golden boy brother Ryan basked in every ounce of their attention. We weren't poor, but we sure as hell weren't the kind of family that did vacations or nice things. So when Dad, Banks, announced we were going to Uncle Joe's wedding in Colorado, it should have set off alarm bells. But it didn't. Not then. 3 days into that miserable road trip, I regretted not pretending to be sick. Dad and Ryan spent every waking hour entertaining themselves at my expense, mocking me, shoving, sneering. Mom occasionally whispered, "That's enough." But it never was. It never would be. She was too scared of Banks, too eager to keep the peace. Let me explain something. Banks wasn't just strict. He was the kind of father who'd drag you out of bed at 3 a.m. to scream about a chore you forgot. The kind of man who'd smash your stuff if it was in his way. Since I was old enough to speak, he'd called me useless, stupid, worthless. And Ryan? He figured out fast that his only shot at survival was being Dad's shadow, his little clone. That morning, we stopped at some pitiful rest stop somewhere in Colorado. Just endless plains, mountains like ghosts in the distance, and a grimy bathroom that reeked of piss and bleach. I'd been passed out in the back seat, waking up stiff and sore, Metallica shirt sticking to my skin. I needed to stretch. "Use the bathroom." Ryan was cracking up at something Dad said. Mom was fussing with her makeup in the visor mirror. I didn't think twice. Left my phone charging in the car, left my wallet in the cup holder. Why wouldn't I? We were in the middle of nowhere. I was gone maybe 10 minutes. When I stepped back out into the blinding sun, squinting across the cracked parking lot, they were gone. At first I thought it was a joke. Maybe they'd parked around back. Maybe they were watching, waiting to laugh when I panicked. I walked the whole lot, checked behind the vending machines, circled the grimy bathroom building. Nothing. That's the thing about betrayal when it comes from your own blood. It hits different. I sat on the curb, arms draped over my knees, staring down the highway like they'd come back any second. People came and went. A trucker asked if I was okay. I lied. I said I was waiting on my girlfriend. He nodded and drove off. An hour passed. Then 2. Somewhere between the 3rd and 4th hour, the truth hit me like a gut punch. They weren't coming back. I could almost hear them laughing. Ryan's voice, smug. "Bet he's crying right now." Dad's gruff chuckle. "He'll figure it out, if he's not as useless as he looks." And Mom, always silent, always looking away. My first instinct was to beg someone for their phone. Call Dad. Plead. Promise I'd be better. But then I remembered every miserable memory, every cruel joke, every shove, every night I cried into my pillow while they laughed. And something inside me snapped. I walked up to a woman with 2 kids loading snacks into their minivan. I asked if I could borrow her phone. She hesitated, but I must have looked harmless enough because she handed it over. I didn't call them. Instead, I asked for the number to the nearest shelter in Grand Junction, 40 miles away. Told her there'd been an emergency, that someone was supposed to pick me up, but plans changed. I must have sounded believable because she offered me a ride. That ride saved my life. The shelter was bare bones. Fluorescent lights, worn-out couches, a smell of cheap coffee, and desperation. The manager, Dave, let me use the computer. I searched for my uncle's wedding invitation. Maybe I could find them. Maybe I could still crash the wedding, make them face me. But as I stared at that screen, something shifted. For the first time, I wondered, did I even want to? I sat there staring at the screen, the cursor blinking like it was waiting for me to make a choice. And for the first time, I really asked myself, why? Why was I even considering chasing after people who'd laughed as they left me stranded like I was nothing? They'd made their choice. Now it was time I made mine. Instead of calling, I created a new email, looked up resources for getting a replacement ID, and scrolled through job listings that paid cash. Somewhere between rage and survival, a plan began to take shape. 2 days later, I found myself scrubbing dishes at this run-down little diner called Sonny's. The sign was half burnt out, but the place smelled like coffee and fried eggs, like somewhere real. Dolores owned it, 60-something, with purple streaks running through her gray hair and enough tattoos to tell a whole life story without speaking. I'd walked in, nerves shot, and told her the truth. Or close enough. Said my wallet got stolen, I needed work. She looked me over, lips pursed around a cigarette she never bothered to light. "Dishwasher quit yesterday," she finally said. "You steal from me, you're dead. Start now." Funny thing about rock bottom, it's solid. You can build from there. For a week, I worked doubles until my hands were raw. Slept at the shelter, wore clothes donated by people who had nothing but still gave. Dave, the shelter guy, helped me file for new records from my home state. The first cash I earned, I bought a burner phone from Walmart, $29.99 with prepaid minutes. Exactly 7 days after they left me, that phone rang. Unknown number. My gut twisted, but I answered. "Sal? Oh my God? Sal, where are you? Are you okay?" It was my mother, voice shaking, all trembling concern. "We've been looking everywhere. It was supposed to be a joke. They waited. We came back. Couldn't find you." In the background, I heard him. "Tell him to stop being dramatic and get his ass to Joe's." That was Dad. Then Ryan's stupid laugh. "Dude, I bet he's crying." For once, I didn't. I let the silence stretch until my mother choked on her fake concern. And when I finally spoke, my voice was steady, stronger than it had ever been when talking to any of them. "You wanted to see if I could make it on my own?" I said. "Watch me." Then I hung up, blocked the number, blocked every family number I could remember for good measure. The next day, I walked into Verizon and changed my number completely. 27 missed calls before it stopped. I imagined their faces, first smug, then panicked, then pissed, when they realized the punching bag wasn't coming home. A month later, I had my own place, a studio above a laundromat that smelled like fabric softener and burnt lint. But it was mine. All mine. I worked my way up to prep cook at Sonny's. Dolores taught me how to properly chop vegetables without losing a finger, and told me I had good hands for it. That was the first time I can remember someone believing I could do anything right. Some nights when it got quiet, I'd log into that old email, the one they knew. The inbox overflowed. From Mom. "Please come home. We're sorry." From Dad. "This childish stunt needs to end." From Ryan. "Dude, it was just a joke. Stop being such a—" I never replied. Not once. Because here's the thing about freedom. Once you taste it, you don't crawl back into the cage. It wasn't easy. Some nights I'd scroll through Instagram, see people with families that actually loved them, and it'd hit me like a sucker punch. Holidays were brutal. But every morning I woke up in my shitty little apartment, smelled downy in the air, and reminded myself, no one here calls me worthless. By Joe, I built a life. 3 months after they left me at that rest stop, I checked the email one last time. There was one final message from Mom. "Your grandmother's asking about you. Please, just let us know you're alive." I stared at it, then deleted the whole account. Threw the old SIM card in the dumpster behind Sunny's. That night, Dolores taught me how to make her famous apple pie, said I had good hands for pastry. That simple sentence undid me more than anything else. The first real compliment I'd heard in years. I never looked back. Update. 5 years after that Colorado rest stop, I stumbled on Ryan's face in a local news article, tagged on Facebook, because, yeah, maybe I was still curious. DUI. Wrapped his car around a telephone pole. No one was hurt, except the pole. They used his high school football photo in the paper. He looked so young, so smug. Nothing like the bloated mugshot underneath. That's the thing about karma. It's slow, but it always knows where you live. By then, I had a life in Colorado. Small, simple, mine. And I smiled. Because they'd left me for dead. And I survived. The crappy studio above the laundromat eventually became a memory. Traded in for a modest one-bedroom with actual windows that opened. Progress, slow but steady. I'd clawed my way up from scrubbing dishes to working the line, and finally, assistant manager at Sunny's. Dolores still ruled the place like a queen with a spatula scepter, her voice sharp, her apron always dusted in flour. But somewhere along the way, she'd stopped seeing me as the lost kid she took pity on. Now, she smirked when she called me her surrogate nephew, like she wasn't sure if she meant it as an insult or not. The first real thing I bought, once the savings account had more than just pocket change, was a laptop. Nothing fancy, just enough to stream classes from the community college. Business management. Introduction to accounting. All the stuff banks, my father, used to sneer at, calling it busy work for people too soft for real labor. Every time I logged in, I imagined him choking on those words. Days blurred together, mornings on the grill, afternoons in online lectures, evenings back at Sunny's. Sleep. Repeat. I won't sugarcoat it. I was still messed up. Trust issues weren't even the right word. It was more like having a prepaid subscription to suspicion, and I could cancel anyone's trial period the second they got too close. In 5 years, I let exactly 2 people past my walls. Travis, the neighbor who played bass in a garage band that sounded like angry raccoons fighting over stale beer. He brewed his own beer, too. It tasted like hoppy regret, but he always shared. And Dolores, if she even counted as a friend, and not just my boss. Then came Emily. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork, she'd slide onto the counter stool at Sunny's. Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee. Always a textbook cracked open. Later I found out it was med school, but back then she was just the girl who stared at pages so hard she forgot the world existed. I timed her once. 7 minutes and 23 seconds holding a forkful of cold eggs mid-air. For 4 months, I brought her refills she barely noticed. Until one random Thursday, she blinked, really looked up, and said, "Your name tag's spelled wrong." It wasn't. But after that, it became our thing. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd show up wearing a new wrong name. Gabriele. Gabriele. Gabrieler. She'd point it out. I'd feign shock. The stupidest flirting in history, but somehow, it worked. Our first date wasn't even supposed to be one. Her study group bailed last minute, leaving her with a hard-to-get pizza reservation and no one to share it. I was wiping down the counter when her phone lit up. She sighed, muttered something, and then, almost like fate, looked my way. "You hungry?" Next thing I knew, I was sitting across from her at Antonio's, both of us pretending this wasn't exactly what it looked like. 6 months later, Emily moved in. A year after that, we upgraded to a slightly bigger apartment, a place with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom that didn't sound like it was constantly mid-flush. No more bass solos at 2 a.m., no more laundromat stench clinging to my clothes. Still, late at night, I couldn't help myself. I kept tabs on my family. Fake accounts, burner profiles, Not proud of it, but it was what it was. Dad's hardware store was circling the drain after a Home Depot popped up on the edge of town. His Facebook rants got angrier, more desperate. Posts full of misspelled rage about loyalty and small-town values. Mom turned her social media into a shrine for a family that didn't exist anymore. Old photos, fake smiles. "Missing my boys," she'd post. Boys, plural, always tagged Ryan, never me, like I'd been surgically removed from their history. Ryan, he was Ryan, bouncing from job to job, vague posting about haters and big moves, while the subtext screamed failure. 3 years into my new life, Dolores pulled me aside during inventory. She scratched the back of her neck, awkward. "Thinking about opening a second Sonny's," she said. "Other side of town. Wanted to ask if you'd run it." Not own. Run. I didn't sleep that night. Kept waiting for the punchline, the catch. People like me didn't get handed opportunities like that. Banks made damn sure I grew up knowing exactly how small I was supposed to dream. But that's the thing about poisonous beliefs. They only survive as long as you keep breathing life into them. Poison like that stays in your system long after you've outrun the snake. But when Dolores asked, I said yes. Not because I believed I deserved it, but because Emily, half asleep beside me, murmured, "You'd be an idiot not to." Because Travis, through a haze of weed smoke, just snorted and said, "Bro, you already run the place." Because Dolores, unlike Banks, unlike the family I was born into, had never once made me feel like I was less than. Sonny's East opened 6 months later, smaller than the original. The menu? Mine. Recipes I'd scribbled down on napkins during slow nights. I worked 90-hour weeks that first year, dropped 10 pounds I didn't have to lose. Emily and I fought, loud and messy, about how I was never home. Some nights I came back to passive-aggressive Post-its stuck to the fridge like landmines. Hope you remember what I look like. The plants are dead, by the way. But somehow, it worked. People came. More importantly, people came back. The food was good. The vibe was better. We weren't rolling in it, but the lights stayed on, the bills got paid, and that felt like winning. 4 years after they left me on that road, I made enough to help Emily with her med school loans. Not all of it. Those things are monsters. But enough to make a dent. She cried when I showed her the payment confirmation. Not the movie kind, with a single tear down a perfect cheek, but ugly, red-faced, hiccuping sobs. And for the first time, I felt real, like I'd built something no one could take from me. Then Grandma Rose died. I found out through Facebook. A dramatic post from Mom, full of heart emojis and fly-high angel nonsense. Grandma Rose, she was the only one who ever stood up to Banks, the only one who saw me. She used to slip me crumpled $20 bills, whispering, "For your escape, mijo." I think she meant college. Turns out it was more literal than she ever knew. I thought about going to the funeral. Really did. Looked up flights. Emily said she'd come, hold my hand through the whole mess. Travis offered his beat-up hatchback if I wanted to drive. Dolores? She just shrugged. "Dead don't care if you show, kid. Do what gives you peace." I didn't go. Sent flowers instead. Generic, white lilies. The card just read, Gabriel. No return address, no note. The explosion on social media was immediate. Mom posted about signs and messages from beyond. Ryan made some cryptic comments about prodigal sons. Banks said nothing, but I could imagine him seething behind closed doors. A week later, I got a friend request from a name I didn't recognize. No profile picture, no friends, no posts. I almost deleted it until the message came through. "It's Uncle Joe. Your mom gave me your old email, but it bounced. Are you okay? Your dad's been asking around." My stomach flipped. I blocked the account without replying. That night, I had my first panic attack in 2 years. Curled up on the cold tile of our bathroom floor at 3 a.m., hands trembling, chest tight. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Just drowning in the fear of banks finding me, walking into Sonny's, tearing down everything I'd built with those calloused, angry hands. Emily found me there an hour later. She didn't ask. Just sat down, leaned her shoulder against mine, and stayed. When I could finally speak, she said the simplest thing. They can't take anything from you that you don't give them. The next morning I called a lawyer, asked about restraining orders, tightened every privacy setting I could find, told Dolores to train the staff. No one gave out my information. Ever. Practical steps. Control what you can. 5 years to the day after they left me on that goddamn roadside, I married Emily. Small ceremony in a state park. Travis was my best man. Dolores baked the cake herself and sobbed through the whole thing. Mascara streaking down weathered cheeks. Emily's family, big, loud, impossibly kind, folded me in like I'd always belonged. Her dad cracked dad jokes that didn't make me flinch. Her mom hugged me like it was the most natural thing in the world, and for the first time, it didn't set off every alarm in my head. That's the thing about family. Sometimes it's not the blood you're born with, it's the people who choose you, and the ones you finally choose back. Funny how the past finds you when you've finally stopped looking. A week after the wedding, I was up late, scrolling my dummy account, half distracted by the glow of the screen and the steady breathing of Emily asleep beside me. That's when I saw it, a post from Banks on a local community page. Looking for information on my son, Gabriel. Last known location, Grand Junction, Colorado. Family emergency. My stomach twisted, but not from fear. There was no emergency. I knew that like I knew my own name. What I didn't know was why. Why, after 5 years of silence, they were looking for me now. Curiosity burned hotter than anger, so I dug. Made another fake profile. Slipped into the Facebook groups from my hometown like a ghost. It didn't take long to piece it together. The hardware store, gone. Foreclosed. The house? Same fate. Mom is vague posting about health battles, without ever saying what. And Ryan had washed back up like driftwood after his 3rd DUI, slinking home because there was nowhere else left to go. They weren't looking for me because they missed me. They were looking for me because they needed something. And for the first time in 5 years, I smiled thinking about them. Not because I was glad they were struggling, but because I realized something I hadn't dared believe until that moment. I didn't care anymore. I shut the laptop, crawled back into bed, and slipped my arm around Emily. For the first time, the past felt weightless. I made a decision right then. I'd keep watching. Not out of hate, not out of love, but because sometimes the best revenge isn't what you say or do. It's what you build while they're busy tearing themselves apart. Final update. It started with a glitch. 15 years after that Colorado rest stop, when I'd convinced myself the past was buried, a notification popped up. LinkedIn. Someone viewed my profile. 27 times. In one day. Recruiters do that sometimes, I told myself. But the name stopped me cold. Ryan Matthew. That's the thing about the past. It's patient. It waits, biding its time in the tall grass, and when you least expect it, snap. By then, my life was unrecognizable from that kid who'd scrubbed dishes to survive. Emily had finished med school and settled into a clinic job 3 days a week so she could be home more with our 2 kids, Sophie, 7, and Liam, 4. We had a small 4-bedroom on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but with a yard where the kids played tag until their cheeks were flushed pink. I even had a little garden, tomatoes that refused to ripen right, but somehow still made me proud. Sonny's had grown to 3 locations, still not a franchise or anything, but steady. I didn't pull line shifts much anymore, except when someone called out. Dolores had semi-retired, though she'd drop in unannounced to critique the crust on her pie recipe, like she always did. I'd made peace with the past, or so I thought. I checked in on them sometimes, every few months. Banks and Marlene were in a cramped rental now. Ryan had married, divorced, and married again. Same messy cycle. We'd all moved on. Or so I told myself. But that LinkedIn notification rattled me in a way I couldn't explain. I told Emily that Sunday night while we folded laundry, our weekly ritual. She paused, a pair of mismatched socks in her hands, and asked if I was okay. I nodded, because what else was there to say? That in an instant I was 22 again, stranded, humiliated, hearing Banks's voice in my head calling me useless. 3 days later, I was at Sunny's East, what used to be the new location, now just part of the family, helping sort out yet another supplier screw-up, when Casey at the front called back, "Hey, there's some family here asking for you." My first thought was Emily's parents, dropping by on their way through. I was already rehearsing how to convince them to stay for dinner, but it wasn't them. I froze as soon as I saw them. Banks, older, smaller, that barrel chest of his hollowed out, shoulders stooped under invisible weight. Marlene, thinner, hair dyed too dark, mouth pinched like life had been chewing her down to the bone. And Ryan. Ryan was the ghost of our father at 40. Same stance, same entitled smirk, filling the doorway like he owned the place. And there was someone else, a young woman, early 20s maybe, hanging back like even she wasn't sure why she was there. No one spoke. The lunch rush faded into background static, like the world knew this wasn't its moment. Banks was the first to break. "Gabriel?" He said it like a question, like maybe if he said it soft enough I'd forget the years. Forget the desert rest stop. Forget that they left me to die and called it a joke. But I wasn't that kid anymore, and for the first time I realized they knew it too. I nodded because, frankly, my voice had abandoned me, off somewhere on a permanent vacation. The truth is, I'd imagined this moment 1,000 different ways over the last 15 years. In some versions, I delivered a flawless speech that left them stunned. In others, I barely looked up, cool and detached, like their presence barely registered. And yeah, in a few late-night fantasies I'm not proud of, there were tears, apologies, and some dramatic family hug. Reality was always messier. I gestured toward an empty table in the corner and told Casey to bring waters. No one argued. We sat, me across from the people who once called themselves my family, and waited. They found me, it turned out, through a magazine blurb. Rocky Mountain Rising, 10 local success stories. Not even a full feature, just a sidebar with a photo of me smiling in front of Sunny's. But it was enough. A friend of Mom's, someone from high school, apparently, moved to Colorado, saw the piece, and sent it with the message, "Isn't this your son?" That's how they found me. Not through some grand epiphany, not because they missed me, because someone else did the work. They talked over each other at first. Mom rambling about how worried they'd been, Banks grumbling that I'd misunderstood what happened that day. And Ryan awkwardly tried to play the part of the long-lost brother, cracking jokes like we were catching up over beers instead of facing 15 years of silence. The young woman sitting beside him, Brooke, Ryan's second wife, just watched me quietly, curious eyes tracking every word like she was trying to solve a puzzle. I stayed silent. Let them spin their version of reality where they were the victims, where they didn't strand me like garbage and drive away laughing. I noticed the details, though. Banks couldn't stop glancing around, mentally sizing up the restaurant like it was already his. Mom's hand trembled when she reached for her water. Ryan's practiced charm slipped every time he thought I wasn't watching. Finally, when they ran out of breath, I asked the only thing that mattered. Why now? That's when the real story came out, piece by pathetic piece. Banks had heart problems, no insurance, medical bills piling up. The second house, foreclosed. Ryan's latest business venture, something shady with cryptocurrency, had collapsed spectacularly. Mom needed knee surgery. Couldn't afford it. They hadn't come for family. They'd come for money. I should have been furious. Should have stood up, thrown them out, told them exactly where they could shove their guilt trip. But instead, I felt something I didn't expect. Pity. They looked so small sitting there. So fragile. These people who once towered over my whole world were just broken, flawed, human. So I invited them to dinner. Let me think on it, I said. Talk to Emily. I needed time. They nodded, eager. Banks already half smiling like it was a done deal. That afternoon felt like living in a parallel universe. I picked Sophie up from dance class and helped Liam prep his show and tell. A plastic dinosaur he swore was a velociraptor, but looked suspiciously like a T-Rex. Meanwhile, I texted Emily updates. She offered to take the kids to her sister's. I told her no. I wanted them there, wanted my family to meet my family. Dinner was chicken enchiladas. Nothing fancy, just the old El Paso recipe I'd memorized years ago, tweaked until it tasted like home. Sophie set the table, tongue sticking out in concentration, placing forks on the wrong side until Emily gently corrected her. Liam wore his Spider-Man costume because, according to him, Tuesdays were for Spider-Man now. When the doorbell rang, I almost dropped the dish. Emily caught my arm and squeezed. Whatever happens, I've got you. The kids looked up, instinctively knowing something big was happening. Here's the thing about moments you dread. When they arrive, they're somehow both worse and better than you imagined. Introductions were awkward. Banks kept calling Emily Karen, no matter how many times she corrected him. Marlene cried every time she looked at the kids, which freaked Liam out until he hid behind Emily's leg. Ryan and Brooke were the least painful. Trying, at least. But Ryan couldn't help himself, dropping casual little hints about family helping family, like it was scripted. After dinner, Emily took the kids upstairs for bath time, shooting me a look that said, "Text if you need me," or the cavalry. Then it was just me and them. Banks cleared his throat, started in on the pitch, how family sticks together, how he always knew I'd turn out just fine, lie, and how now, well, now they needed just a little help. $20,000. Just a loan, of course. I let him finish. Let the words hang heavy in the air. Then, finally, quietly, I asked the question I'd been waiting 15 years to ask. Tell me, Dad, if I'd died at that rest stop, would you have come back for the body? The silence that followed was deafening. I looked right at him and asked, "Do you remember what you said to me on my 18th birthday?" Banks blinked, face blank. Of course he didn't. "Let me remind you," I said, voice steady. "At least you can't disappoint me anymore once you're not legally my problem." "That's what you told me. Word for word." His jaw tensed, but I was already turning toward my mother. "And you? Do you remember what you did when he threw my community college acceptance letter in the trash?" She flinched, but stayed silent. I didn't let her look away. "Nothing," I answered for her. "You did nothing." Finally, my eyes landed on Ryan. "What about you? Remember telling my first girlfriend I was probably gay anyway when she came looking for me? You laughed when she left crying. Ring any bells?" Ryan shifted in his seat, his face twisting into something defensive. I was just a kid." I shook my head, cutting him off. the table fell into a suffocating silence. For the first time, none of them had anywhere to run. And Banks, good old Banks, started to find that dangerous edge to his voice, the one that used to make me flinch, make me small. But here's the thing. I wasn't that kid anymore. I was 15 years and a whole lifetime past him. Without another word, I stood, walked to my office, and came back with an envelope. Handed it straight to Banks. He opened it, confused. "What the hell is this?" "It's a check," I told him, calm as I'd ever been. $73.50. That's what a Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction back home cost in 2010. I met his eyes dead on. "That's what it would have taken for me to get home after you left me there." For a moment, the world held its breath. Then Banks exploded like clockwork. "Ungrateful little shit. Selfish. You've always been a damn disappointment." The classics, every greatest hit from my childhood, playing one last time. But I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. I just stood up, let his rage fizzle into the air, and said the words I never thought I'd get to say. "It's time for you to go." Mom tried guilt next, eyes shining with crocodile tears. "How could you do this? To your family?" And Ryan? The friendly facade dropped like a mask hitting the floor. Cold, calculating, exposed. Brooke, quiet the whole time, looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. They finally shuffled out, Banks crumpling the check and tossing it at our doorstep like it could hurt me. I just stood there, watching the door close behind them, legs suddenly shaky, but soul steady. Emily came down, eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay?" I nodded once, not trusting my voice. Together we cleaned the dishes in silence, checked on the kids, both fast asleep, peaceful, got ready for bed like it was any other night. Before I turned off the lights, I checked the front camera feed. Couldn't help myself. They were still there, arguing in the driveway. Banks gesturing wildly, Mom crying, Ryan staring at our house with that same look I'd seen all my life. Part envy, part hate. And then, they left. Just like that. Got into their rental car and disappeared down the street. I've never seen them again. Don't expect to. That chapter's closed. And here's the thing about revenge. Real revenge isn't loud. It's not screaming matches or fists through walls. No, the best revenge is living so well they can't touch you. It's every belly laugh from my kids. Every Sunday morning, where the only sound is coffee brewing and Emily humming in the kitchen. Every night I lock my front door knowing no one will raise their voice on the other side. I never made it back home. I built one.